Well, folks, we finally got confirmation and an insight into exactly why the royal family had such worry and insisted on conversations and had so many concerns about the colour of the Harkle children. They are ginger. They had to have these conversations. The skin was going to be far too pale for their liking, and they didn't want all that red hair. One redhead in the family was enough, so they had to pull the Harkles aside and say, listen here, my loves. Can't you do something about this? Because there's too much ginger going on, too much shades of auburn. For my red-headed fruits, I'm teasing you, of course, my dears. There's nothing I like more than those wonderful strawberry-hued people out there. Ginger babies are a thing of beauty. And Lilibet looks as cute as any other child. So nice to have an image of the, a full proper image of the Queen's great-great-granddaughter. I never wanted to see a photograph of her because she's not from the family of a working royal. So it was much of a muchness to me. I couldn't understand what some of you were making such a fuss about. Where is she? Why can't we see her? I don't want to see her. And it's no shade to the baby. It's a real disappointment what her parents stole from her, which is the right to grow up in this country where she is surrounded by her regal history and where she could forge a proper relationship with Prince Charles, who is the next king. She and Archie have been deprived of an intimate, loving relationship with not just a grandfather, but the next king. Some of you might have been expecting me to come to you absolutely furious today because of the release of this photograph one day after Her Majesty's Jubilee, but I've got to tell you, I just find it funny. I find it laughable, absolutely laughable. It's such an act of desperation. What we've seen is a feeble, paltry attempt at some kind of deus ex machina. And I'm afraid they're going to be bitterly disappointed if they think that that's going to trump what's just happened this weekend. They are grasping. And their trump card was always going to be Lilibet, who they gave the Queen's nickname to. They came to England with the specific intent of getting that photo with the Queen and having it published on Lilibet's first birthday, not a few days afterwards. They wanted it published on that birthday, over Jubilee weekend with Her Majesty. And I've got no idea whether they did in fact manage to capture at some point a photograph, formal or informal, of the two Lilibets together. But from all reports, it was made very, very clear to the Harkles. They were told, no, you're not going to be able to release a photograph over this time. And most of the press reports seem to indicate that they were actually banned from bringing an official photographer and having that moment that they wanted so very dearly captured. So not only that, but they also were not pictured together with the Queen at St. Paul's, and things have not turned out how they planned in any way, shape or form. They wanted that royal connection. The best they could rustle up was having the photograph taken at Frogspawn Cottage. So, that's the only royal connection that they can put together with that first clear image. Of course, we've had a little glimpse of her in the past for their festive greetings. And some of you have asked, well, why didn't they merch that photograph to a publication? They could have merched it. They couldn't have merched that first photograph in such an obvious way because they would have taken so much criticism for it. They were never going to sell that photograph to the highest bidder. The merch, if you want to put it that way, and the money shot would have been the fact that Lilibet was going to be pictured with the Queen. This was always their intention, because that would have been hustling currency on a scale that any other kind of collaboration with the publication, People magazine, Vanity Fair, Time magazine, whatever, I'm afraid, as lucrative as that might have been for them to get the exclusive photo, nothing trumps royalty, nothing trumps an association with the Queen. That would have been a timeless image of the two together that would keep bringing in the mega bucks forever and ever and ever and for all eternity. The royals have played an absolute blinder, and it's a testament to the long game as opposed to the quick fix reaction. Do you see? Those who were so confused a year ago as to why the royals weren't reacting. Instant gratification is inferior to prudent grace. Now that they're scrambling and they have their tail between their legs and they're worried that everybody's falling out of love with them, they're falling back now on plan B. Get the children out there, who can't resist a cute little child. Well, of course, they weren't banking on the Cambridge children, were they? And I'm afraid it doesn't matter how many photographs they put out of their brood, who's going to trump Prince Louis and the headlines he got over this weekend. And I'm not trying to pitch the children against each other. They have nothing to do with it. They're all innocent to the machinations of their parents. But, if they think they're going to take the gloss and the shine off of all the love that went to George, Charlotte and Louis, this tremendous trio of royals over the weekend internationally, and that has captured everybody's imagination, they are very much mistaken, I'm afraid. They weren't banking on that, and they're seething. And in their effort to perform this Deus Ex Machina, where it's the reveal after the reveal, and they're going to rain on the Cambridge parade, I'm afraid it was too little too late, and I'm afraid everybody's already got your number. So it just looks like you're reaching. Do you know what I mean? It just looks like you're reaching, my dears. And what startles me is the arrogance. The arrogance of these two turning up and seriously believing that the royal family would be clamouring for their blessing and their approval. They really thought that they would come and bestow the royal family with a bit of their LA cool, my dears. What the Brits look for and admire is a sense of stability, not these fidgety, jumpy types that have been illustrated by the Harkles. And wasn't it wonderful when we saw in that moment that Prince Louis joined Prince Charles and sat on his lap and had a little bounce? I wouldn't mind having a little bounce on the next king's knee, in fact, would you? I'd quite enjoy that. But yes, that was such an endearing moment, and it was Prince William that gave him the nod and said, do you want to go and sit with Grandpa for a while? And then I saw on the footage, he called over to Charles and said, Louis wants to come and join you, or words to that effect. Is that all right? And you could see that it was entirely unplanned, entirely uncontrived. Charles didn't know it was coming, and he was like, oh yes, that'd be lovely. And Louis went confidently over into his lap, didn't he? Because they have such a close relationship, confidently there, and looked very happy to be on Grandpa's lap and have a little bounce. And it was such a beautiful sight, and it must have driven the Harkles absolutely mad, to be honest with you. Well, those children could have had the same relationship if they hadn't flown the nest like that. Personally, I don't find it as endearing as many of you find it to see the three of them wriggling about and jostling and becoming rather impatient. It's just not something that I find that charming in children. But I did find it very lovely to see the hug that he suddenly threw Catherine. Oh, and that was so cute. And she's just so beautiful, that girl. So beautiful. And as for the other grandfather, Mr. Markle, I mean, as I've said, I wish him nothing but the best when it comes to his health, but I am still so relieved that he was not on these shores for the Jubilee. And for those of you that wanted him to be around and wanted him clattering around Windsor Castle or the chapel where he missed the marriage and going around with GB News doing all these promotional activities with them, well, that's your business, my dears, but thank God he wasn't here over Jubilee weekend, because in Meghan's absence, and I will give them praise for only making those couple of appearances, they didn't get up to any tricks while they were here, none that brought them into the headlines more than they would otherwise have been. But in the absence of that, people would have been falling back a lot more on Mr. Markle's appearances over that entire Jubilee weekend. We would have seen on every single one of those 4 days of celebration Thomas's heartache, Thomas's despair, bringing more attention to Meghan's, that whole scenario in his plight. So thank God he wasn't there, and I think that was a vulgar scenario to even attempt. And he didn't help himself. We saw him over the last month quite spitefully calling Prince Harry the ginger husband. In a really denigrating way, not just in a comical, humorous way, in a denigrating way. Well, he's got at least one ginger grandchild now, So how do you think they would feel about that, to know that you're having a giggle and a rather malicious, spiteful dig at their red-headed father? It's not a good look, I'm afraid. And did you notice, by the way, in those vast crowds at the Jubilee, the range of ages, so many young people there enjoying it, so many races, creeds and colours. It was just a delicious kaleidoscope. It flies in the face of everything that Harry and Meghan told the rest of the world. I know so many people internationally watch my broadcasts. Can you see the truth compared to the lies they told about our nation? And this is why some of us were so infuriated that we felt moved to speak out against this lie that they told and this bad image that they allowed to be put out there. It's there for all of you to see. Even after all the bad publicity that the poor Cambridges have been through and the royal family over the last 2 years, you can see the people of our nation of all stripes supporting and loving them, as they always have and as they've always had in return. That never changed. There was never any bigotry within the royal family, not one iota, not one grain of salt. And it still blows my mind that this couple, who claim to have integrity, compassion and humility, still won't fess up and apologise for lying. And if they can't bring themselves to even do that, then to at least admit to misreading certain signals or conversations. They don't even have the good grace to even approach any of that kind of atonement. But I'm not going to lie to you guys, this might now begin to get very, very messy because they're scrambled. Scrambled Megs, remember, and Has on toast, marmalade on toast. They are going to be scrambling. They have their reputation, I was going to say it's staken on the line, but I think we're beyond that now, aren't we? Their reputation's in the gutter, and you are about to see the emergence of a huge public relations effort on behalf of C&C, Charles and Camilla. I might have to start calling them that to save my tongue here and there. C&C and the Cambridges. You are going to see a dramatic amping up of imagery, occasions, all kinds of jolliness involving the Cambridges, the Cornwalls and the children as well, because that, of course, is of great advantage to them. And in addition, Her Majesty is purposefully aiding and abetting her heirs and their families. She is purposefully aiding them and helping them, and it is her mission, it is her wish, her legacy to usher in a period of easy transition for her beloved son and grandson, and to fulfill the wishes of her beloved grandmother, Queen Mary, who so wrought into the Queen the importance of the crown. The crown at all costs. You protect it, you look after it, and that doesn't just include your reign. It is the preservation of that crown. And seeing this become more and more apparent over the last few days will be an egregious insult to Prince Harry's ego. Egregious. He is going to be one to watch out for, and that memoir, the final draft, I'm sure, is still in process. So who knows what he will be adding into that mixture. It's certainly not over, my dears, this battle, if you want to call it that. It's certainly not over. We have so much more to come because his ego cannot cope. He has that second brother syndrome where he feels so vastly inferior to Big Willie, and he is, let's face it, but that's his own fault. That's his own fault for not nurturing noble qualities within himself and instead nurturing his own arrogance and his own petulance and his own inferiority complex. It's very sad. There's so much wisdom in that saying, kill them with kindness. And if there's any strategy that the royal family have employed over the last couple of years, I'd say that that is right up there. Right up there. You can't go wrong with that strategy, my dears. Kill them with kindness. You saw it in their very first statement after the Oprah interview, when I'm sure they were all spitting blood. They remain beloved members of this family. You saw it in social media posts this weekend. Happy birthday, dear Lilibet. You see it all the time from them, and it cuts off their oxygen. It dampens their fiery fervour, drop by drop. Do you see? It gives them nothing further to retaliate against. And if they find something to retaliate against, or if they continue with their accusations and besmirchments, it's going to look nothing other than vulgar, petty, and infantile, because you see nothing but stillness and kindness from the royal family. So what are they getting such a tiz about? Why are they getting into such a tantrum? They were invited to the royal functions, they were invited to the Jubilee, they were given their own procession down the aisle, their own time to process, even if they were delivered to the second row on the wrong side. They were still given some considerations. So what are they complaining about? Kill them with kindness. Wendy Hurst, according to news reports, a gruesome twosome left after the little one's party. They didn't even stay in the country to witness the Queen's Jubilee concert. What a truly disrespectful pair of ignorant nobodies. Well, I will, with due respect, I'm going to disagree with you there, Wendy. I'm absolutely delighted. I will give them praise where praise is due, and even if it's for nefarious reasons that weren't their original intentions. I am delighted that they got out as soon as they could. I am delighted that they weren't at the Jubilee concert. I didn't want extra photos and footage of them there. They could have easily shuffled along to that, whether in the royal box or not, and they didn't. And I couldn't be happier, apart from that appearance at St Paul's and when they insisted on winding down the window. The crowds, we saw very little of them, and I'm not going to complain about it, because that was my wish, and it's what I've been expressing to you, as little as possible. I didn't want them there, I didn't want her father there drumming up all kinds of vignettes and scenarios. So, I'm not going to sit here and whinge about the fact that they more or less complied with that. But don't get me wrong, I don't put anything past them. There's still the possibility that a photograph was captured with the Queen. There's also the possibility that the Queen wanted an official photograph with her great-granddaughter to be taken at what could possibly be the only opportunity for that to happen. So I don't rule that out, but I do most certainly take heart in the fact that there was no photographs over Jubilee weekend released. That is just manna from heaven to me. Georgia says, so Lilibet wasn't christened. Well, we have no confirmation either way, but it doesn't seem like a christening took place. And one other further blow to them was the fact that Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury who baptised Archie, came down with COVID. So that was a further blow to them and any plans they might have had in that direction. Some of you mentioned the Queen's outfit when she appeared on the balcony, and now the exuberance of that moment's over, and I don't mean to take away from how splendid it was. I will confess to you that I did not like her outfit at all. I'm not a huge fan of green, as I've told you before, in clothing. I love it in nature and everywhere else, but not especially in clothing. I don't like that neon green. She loves it. She wears it on many occasions. Bright, bright, bright green. And she and Kate looked very neon. I loved what Kate was wearing. But I wouldn't have gone for that, I'm afraid, especially because it was the Platinum Jubilee. I thought the other clothes that she wore that week, the sort of platinum blue number and then the more mint number, I thought they were both much, much nicer. I understand it's her tactic to be seen by the crowds in bright colours, but to be honest, in front of Buckingham Palace, they have a great big statue there, so everyone's field of vision is blocked by the sculpture or the statue, and beyond that there are screens everywhere, so everyone would have had the same view of the Queen anyway. I didn't understand why she went for quite such a bright green. Lynn Evans, just wondering the significance of the colour green Her Majesty wore on the balcony. I don't know if there was any symbolism in the colour green on this occasion that she wanted to impart. It is the colour that symbolises hope, isn't it, for many? I believe it represents hope, so perhaps it was a nod to hope for the future. And I also didn't understand why she wore that hat with the black pom-pom in the middle. I couldn't understand the black pom-pom. I didn't think it was great. Some of you have suggested it was in honour to her bereavement, to express her grief for Prince Philip, mourning rather, and that she's still missing him. I have absolutely no idea. Of course, it was one that she looked lovely, and it was great to see her. If it was my choice, though, I would not have put her in bright green. just because it's her final balcony appearance, I would imagine. And she got it very right with the Diamond Jubilee on that night. So I wanted to see her in something platinum, maybe with a bit of a sparkle. Or actually, I think it would have been lovely to see her in white, royal, regal white, for her last balcony appearance. I had so many comments from those of you who, like me, found themselves weeping and crying and sobbing over the last few weeks, getting emotional about the Queen. So we're all in it together, aren't we? Friends from all around the globe. And one of the moments that really choked many of you up, as it did me, was in that moment in the Paddington Bear vignette. It was the moment when the bear said to Her Majesty, "Thank you for everything." That seemed to be the thing that spoke for all of us, you know. He kind of took that moment and thanked the Queen on our behalf. And she said, "How very kind," with that lovely smile. So that was a real triumph, wasn't it? Miriam Fernandez says, why can't William learn the number one rule that's made his grandmother's reign so respected and admired? Stop talking about mental health and saving the bloody planet. They are politically charged topics, like it or not. Oh God, River, please don't tell me the monarchy will also go woke. Miriam Fernandez, I agree with you. I've been considering this over the last few months with all this talk of climate change and, as you say, the focus on mental health. I do think it's wonderful that they have some involvement with mental well-being and enterprises of that kind. I think that's absolutely fine. But yes, too much attachment and too much orating with regards to what's fashionable now in environmental and mental health circles. I'm afraid I agree with you. And just because it's fashionable now and various ideas are flying now, it doesn't mean they will in the future. So just as Her Majesty kept tight-lipped on that kind of thing and left more of the environmental concerns to her husband, I think that William would be better advised to keep his trap shut on certain situations, or at least not make it the forefront of his intentions, for the simple reason that, exactly as you say, there are political implications to some of these things. They must steer clear of politics. That has to be a constant. And these things are politically charged. There are political motivations behind them. And he might get his fingers burnt very badly if he dabbles too much along that avenue. I'm not saying it has to be avoided entirely. There's certainly a place for conversations regarding ecology, sustainability, all that kind of thing have their place in the conversation. But it's when things start veering over into the territory of lobbying, or looking like you're lobbying on behalf of something, or in a rather partisan sort of way, I'm afraid that is when things become dangerous. We've heard for years these rumours that Prince Charles's intention is to slim down the monarchy and give it a more refined look. And many of us, including me, worried about that. We're used to seeing 20, 30 people on the balcony sometimes, extended members, you know, the Michaels, for example, and the Kents and the Gloucesters and all of them. And I thought we'd lose something by not having them all there and having more royals to choose from. I think it's a shame that there's not going to be in the future perhaps as many royals taking on the hundreds of patronages. And I think the workforce, it would be a shame if they lose a workforce. But I do have to say that image of them on the balcony with just the heirs and their families was very strong, wasn't it? And in many ways stronger than when you see lots of superfluous royals hanging around and no one's really sure who they were. In this instance, especially for the Queen's final appearance, it really worked. Having that sort of capsule wardrobe of the royals, you know, the major players, was very strong. So if Prince Charles did have some involvement in that, then maybe there is a wisdom to that method. But I would just urge caution into losing too many of the other royals that could help with various duties and patronages. Because even though, I mean, when it comes to people like Princess Alexandra, who, okay, is rather ripe of age now in the winter season of life, and the other elder members of the family, I mean, maybe 1 in 1,000 young people might know who they are. Probably less, to tell you the truth. Very few people. They could walk down the street and be totally unrecognised by most people in England now. But the fact is that behind the scenes they still do a lot of really good stuff, and charities know them, and their proximity to the royal family is used to do a lot of good and to uphold a lot of institutions. So that would be a shame to go. Mum to Cuties said the hunky man sitting behind the Harkles at the service is Johnny Thompson, the Queen's Mr. Brown, rumoured to be put there to guard the Harkles. Make sure they behave. Yes, indeed, that hunky man was the commanding major, Johnny Thompson, who's worked beside the Queen for a number of years. Lovely looking, isn't he? I do not think that he was put there to guard the Harkles, my dear, but you never know. You could be privy to information that I don't know. He should have been there. It would be a very good idea. But he certainly upstaged them, didn't he, my dears, and was able to distract. Carol Emery, we both got our wish, River. The Harkles weren't on the balcony. Yippee. And yes, I want to draw attention to this again, just because I think it's important, my dears, that we savour our triumphs, you know, because this will continue to be a rocky road, as well as the memoir coming up. We also have the Queen's death over the next few years. I'm not going to be taboo about it. We also have that period of transition coming, and then all the gloves are going to be off, because his one ally, as he likes to think, his close confidant, the Queen, bestie, will no longer be there, so the gloves will come off. This is a saga that is going to, you know, play out like some grand fable of fiction, but the truth, which is stranger than fiction, over the next few years. So we have to savour these moments of triumph. You know, for the last few months, we've been praying that there would be no balcony appearance. It's important, and that they wouldn't hijack the Jubilee. And they've been muffled and tempered and royally dealt with. And it won't be the last we hear of them by any means, but I agree with you, my dear Carol. We got our wish, and I will give them some praise for their part in that, but also the royal family will also get my praise for their part in keeping them at bay and quelling them. I probably watched clips of them on the balcony when they sang God Save the Queen. There's different clips from different angles on YouTube, by the way, but I've probably watched it 30 times and I cry every single time. At the Queen's expression, at the formality of the occasion, at the passion of the crowds. For those in the kingdom, you'll recognise those stalwarts of the scene. Lorraine Chase. How much more British can you get than Lorraine Chase? Mixed with Rylan, Holly Willoughby, who else was there? Debbie McGee, magician's assistant Debbie McGee. Oh, there was one other. Who was it with Lorraine Chase? Oh yes, Angela Rippon. Angela Rippon it was. Those of us in Britain, seeing those faces we know so well, that are indelibly printed into our national psyche, brimming with tears and emotion because they get to look at their beloved Queen, our beloved Queen, for what is probably her final appearance, and get to sing out loud, God Save the Queen. Those of you who have watched me conducting the fanfare in the past know that, of course, I was thrilled with that moment as they trump their bugles or whatever it is, their trumpets, the trumpeteers and the cornets, and the brass strikes up with that grand fanfare, and then we move to God Save the Queen, and I was just in absolute heaven. And when I watched it, I did actually sing through my tears with as much passion as I could, hoping the energy would reach Her Majesty. What joy. They had a double-decker bus representing each of the decades in relation to pop music, 50s with Cliff Richard, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, thousands, etc. I loved the 90s bus. I would have loved to have been on that bus. That looked like a bit of fun. Kate Moss, Charlotte Tilbury. Was Naomi Campbell there? I thought I saw a shot of Naomi Campbell, but yes, that looked like a great fun. I wouldn't mind being on that bus. I particularly enjoyed seeing Princess Anne doing a little do-do-do-do-do-do. Doing the Lambeth Walk. and having a little boogie and then a chuckle with Charles. They enjoy that song, beloved of the working classes of London particularly. It's a lovely song, and it goes back, I think it was Margaret Rhodes that wrote in her autobiography of the times, they used to always sing that song as children during the war and the Blitz times, and back in the day the Queen Mother would encourage a lovely sing-song and a little shuffle doing the Lambeth Walk. So that was lovely to see. Hello River, did you happen to see how really lovely the Duchess of Cornwall looked on stage during the Prince of Wales tribute to the Queen? The breeze was flowing her pretty hair back off her forehead, and we thought at home how really beautiful she looked. She is very beautiful. I agree with you. Oh, you think too that she needs to hoist the girls up where they belong. I haven't noticed that. But through the years, I've truly come to appreciate and love her, and she's certainly been very good for the Prince of Wales. I just wish the same could have been said about poor Harry's choice. Yes, well, I wanted to bring Camilla into the conversation just because when I criticise Meghan's style, and I think she chooses very unflattering cuts for her, and she does have a difficult figure to dress, but you know, something that might help guide her along is the silhouette that the Duchess of Cornwall chooses. I wouldn't call it A-line, but you know, it kind of flares outwards, doesn't it, with a slight curve. But cinching, I guess, doesn't work that well for Meghan. But the Duchess of Cornwall, once she found her style and what suited her, she goes with it every time. That shape really works, and that's what Meghan needs. She needs to really work what's going to work as an illusory device to conjure up a nice shape, and something maybe along the lines of a tunic coat that just leaves a nice straight line might help in some way. Lindsay, the fact she brought stylists proves that they were planning on putting in more than one appearance. They've only hightailed it back home because her ego can't take further humiliation of booing and being snubbed. Shame she doesn't get to showcase the rest of her jujube wardrobe. Well, you might have a very good point there, my dear, because she did seem to go to great efforts and pains to ship in her makeup artist and hairstylist. If reports are true, they were certainly in attendance and got to see Archie and Lili, and she was dressed up to the nines with lots of slap on that face at St Paul's Cathedral, as if she was going to the Oscars, which seemed rather an inordinate amount of preparation for, as you say, this very brief appearance. And yes, I would imagine that she did have more plans to be seen or photographed, and you know, maybe they were photographed at some point. But yes, that is an extraordinarily amount of effort. It's very new money, very vulgar and extremely bourgeois, I've got to tell you. If it's okay for the Queen of England to make do with a little silver shampoo and set and a dusting of powder and some pink lippy that she crayons on from her own handbag, you know, this is the Queen of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth and all her realms. She doesn't need all this paraphernalia. Why does the Duchess of Sussex? Thanks for popping in to sip the tea with me, my fruits. I look forward to catching up with you soon in the next broadcast. My tip jar is in the description box below, and have a very merry day and a lovely week ahead. Ta-ra!